Either by chance or on purpose, innovation is the driving engine of civilization. As a classical joke goes, Lower Paleolithic women invented marriage because they needed someone who could light a fire for cooking, and men invented the wheel to run away from them. While the motives may be somewhat twisted, it is not altogether untrue that there is often a problem, sometimes in disguise, at the heart of any innovation. People have been using innovation to solve the problems of their daily lives since the first caveman picked up a rock and chipped away at it to make a hand axe about 70,000 years ago, right until today. Whenever the status quo frustrates us, we challenge it, partly because we like to keep things under control and be in charge, partly because we need to keep things under control and to be able to adapt and survive, or better put, to be able to adapt and thrive. Unmet needs are the mother of desire. Desire is the mother of invention, or the most powerful force behind innovation. That's why it is nonlinear, in many cases ignited by chance, for many others carefully planned. Until tamed, innovation is randomly distributed. It is interactive, at times triggered by highly dispersed sparks by lone runners, at times resulting from a well-thought-out, orderly process led by a multidisciplinary team of people. Somewhat whimsical, somewhat predictable, it goes beyond creation. But innovation doesn't necessarily flow, let alone in one direction, say from the idea to the lab, from the lab to the enterprise, from the enterprise to the market. It demands change agents, willing and ready to lead transformations. That's why innovation, as a blend of instinctive human reaction and economically driven planning, is hard to define without leaving some of its more interesting and thought-provoking features aside. Nevertheless, we could say that in essence, innovation brings together invention, insight, entrepreneurship to generate new value, launch growth, and create the future. Just as Procter & Gamble did with its supply chain, Reuters with its products and services, and Google with our way of working, living, and doing business. When Lawrence Roberts developed a system for sending data packets between computers, he had little idea where the innovation would lead. It didn't take long for ARPANET, his computer network, to lose the exclusive flair of its elite of users and explorers from government and universities and gain the democratic applause from the public at large. People around the world began creating documents and programs that could be freely shared through the World Wide Web. Millions of websites appeared on computer screens, offering the most incredible array of content and the unprecedented chance to access a vast global marketplace that never closes. In the 1990s, Larry Page and Sergey Brin built Google to help the world surf that rising ocean of information. Just the starting point at a monumental shift.
It certainly is, I think, the first 21st century company to really rise to prominence and certainly seems to be doing very well today. I think it's successful for a variety of reasons. One is they hire a lot of really smart people. Two, they give them an environment where they can do innovative work and they really nurture the ability of the organization to create innovations. Three, they are very analytical, which is one of my other passions. They make a lot of decisions based on data and analytics. And they set aside time for people to do innovative work. They have a certain amount of time, usually 20%, set aside for doing something that is out of the normal boundaries of production applications.
Lots of factors combine to make Google a very innovative company. The initial powerful search engine that by word of mouth quickly got under the radar of people all over the world, and with the most diverse track records, profiles, interests, jobs, added advertising capability, Google was and is smart enough to create and develop, or to seek and buy, whichever the most suitable alternative to their need, those products or capabilities they deem should be part of their value proposition. They've gotten their fair share of criticism for that, for the number of such products they have yet to monetize. But they have their own vision. Their feeling is first get the eyeballs, get customer usage, and only then, no hurry, eventually start thinking of a way to monetize the feature. They are very patient.
There was an orientation to eyeballs, and many companies never really converted their eyeballs into money. I think Google is quite patient about it, but there certainly is, long-term at least, a desire to convert eyeballs into financial return. And the search and advertising businesses have been so fantastically successful that it's given them the luxury to pursue a lot of other businesses without worrying about their profitability in the short run.
From the very beginning, they believed that they would not provide all the value to their customers. It would come from combining it with the offerings of other companies, from combined functionalities.
Maybe I take Google Maps and I combine it with a real estate listing service so that when I'm looking at a house for sale, I can use Google Maps to figure out exactly where it is and some attributes of that geography and so on. And Google facilitates that kind of work. They make it possible for people to use their capabilities initially without charge, but they always reserve the right, if it becomes really popular, will start charging for it, which they have not generally done, but again, they're very patient and they talk a lot about, 200-year time frames for organizing all the world's information, so they don't need to make profits today.
Innovative, no doubt. From the value proposition to the business model, from an idea and practice of searching that defines work and leisure habits, likes and dislikes, love or hate of a generation, with an approach toward talent that apparently understands what creative youngsters expect from a company that they may decide to work for, or with a leadership, a management style that goes beyond the notion of knowledge worker, in order to fulfill the expectations of those creative, technically skilled, highly motivated, open-minded, daring but sensible people they need.
Of all the companies I ever looked at, I think Google had the most carefully thought out plan for how do we make knowledge workers effective and productive. A whole variety of things like providing them with a series of services, high quality services while on the job. One of the best free cafeterias I've ever eaten in, for example, a lot of recreational things, a set of very high quality buses to take people back and forth from, say, San Francisco to Silicon Valley with internet service so they can actually work as they go. You can get massages, things that kind of take the stress out of the work environment so you're able to be more productive and, let's face it, able to work more hours, which Google people work a lot.
They know everybody's watching. They know their approach to innovation, their talent care and development policy, among other strategies, are at the technological core of their business, as well as the key drivers of their business mode. They are critical components of their competitive advantage. That's why they just let the fireworks, the fuss and flurry around the details, get to the headlines. You have to do reverse engineering to get to the substance, to the gunpowder.
One of the things that struck us is, as we looked at the vast amount of publicly available content about Google, both on their website, blogs, various employees blogging either for Google or informally, was the ability for employees to rapidly get on projects where they can make a difference. So someone would send an email to a project team working on, say, Orkut, their social networking site, and the Orkut team would say, yeah, that sounds good, why don't you come and work with us? And within a week, they would be working on solving a critical problem just because they said they wanted to do it. So that kind of voluntary ability to mobilize intellectual resources, I think, is very unusual in companies.
They try to create an inviting environment. They work to stimulate creativity, free association, out-of-the-box thinking. Not disregarding, but reinforcing, no matter how difficult it may seem at first sight, productivity and effective work. They know that the people they hire want to do great things, and they feel they don't need a lot of directions day to day. But they also believe the best way of moving forward is by creating lots and lots of product innovation and letting the marketplace decide which are the significant ones.
Eric Schmidt is famous for saying at one point he didn't know how many products Google actually had, and I can understand his difficulty because we tried counting them and it's not an easy thing. But basically they think they should just create as much technological capability as possible, and they will let their vast user base, close to 100 million users or so, decide which ones are really useful and which ones weren't.
It may be argued that this could be somewhat chaotic. People using some of their time to do whatever they like, to play outside their usual production framework. The fact is that, as any explanation of innovation suggests, problems are inherently ingrained, intrinsically embedded in the essence of innovation, and they want to make sure that their people can work on problems that are both interesting and relevant to them. Thus, chances that they could have real impact on the solution they come up with, and in turn on customer acceptance, scale up dramatically.
The 20% time is supposed to be for something that doesn't really exist as a product yet. Although, it may be, you could work with a team on a 20% time thing. I think it's fair to say that Google did not really manage that carefully enough, and they have recently hired someone, I think they call it Vice President of Other, whose job it is to try to facilitate opportunities for people to use their 20%, and even that elusive 10% a little bit more effectively.
At Google, the social dynamics of knowledge workers is not undervalued. They put people together in close proximity if they're working on a team, because they say, even though it is an internet-oriented company, the highest bandwidth is a face-to-face conversation. They like to facilitate social interaction at work, so every Google office every Friday has a big beer bust. Some of these ideas have happened before in Silicon Valley firms, but there's an interesting little piece that Eric Schmidt, the CEO, and Hal Varian, the chief economist of Google, put together as the 10 principles for managing knowledge workers.
The social interchange is one, put people close to each other. There is one about make sure that people have consensus in hiring, so they don't hire anyone into Google unless you've had a lot of different interviews. There's something about making decisions on the basis of data, certainly something about devoting specific time, so that's a good sample of them anyway.
But the more knowledge-oriented the business is, the more important intersections become. Meeting a customer need may require deviating from the process explicitly laid out. And companies and managers are, or should be, fully aware that it is a complicated world we live in, far from the mechanical metaphor, and maybe migrating from the natural to the nano world. Art and science, business and leisure, structure and freedom are things to bear in mind when using Google as an innovator to emulate.
You could argue that it's chaotic in a sense because they don't control it closely. On the other hand, they can point to a number of products and innovations that were developed out of the 20% time proportion. So I think it's working pretty well. In fact, one of the criticisms that I have of Google is that they don't allow business people within Google, say I'm an advertising salesman, they don't allow them to take any time to innovate as well. It's mostly focused on product innovation, which I think is a narrow definition of the term.
Companies that care about innovation can emulate some of Google's practices, including dedicated time, hiring and retention policies, technologically, and speaking metaphorically, their approach of putting IT resources in a cloud with a whole variety of non-proprietary servers available. It might be relatively straightforward for other non-technological companies to emulate Google. The knowledge worker practices, the office environment, the freedom to move around the workday, a glimpse of the world to come, and not inherently technological.
Google has created an environment where it's easy for them to add new functionality. They have this incredible cloud computing environment, which is probably one of the most efficient computing environments on Earth. They have a very strong telecommunications infrastructure. They even focus a lot on power generation. They have one of their data centers right next to a hydroelectric plant in Oregon that produces fantastic amount of power. At one point, they were thinking about putting a data center on a floating barge off the coast that would take advantage of wave power. So they think very carefully about what are the resources that are necessary to provide this service, technological and human, and they make sure that they have it in large quantities.
Maybe not many companies have the fantastic cash machine that Google's advertising, algorithms, and search engine turned out to be. Factors that would certainly help run one or two drive tests on the innovation road. But they all have the potential to turn their organizations into just the kind of fantastically stimulating environment Google has created, and knowledge workers really want.
I've heard people say in Reuters, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could run this company like Google? Well, to me, that's just a ridiculous idea, because we're not Google, and we never will be Google, and there's nothing that suggests that we're going to ever be anything like them. But to look at companies who are, for example, investing lots and lots of money and R&D in looking at machine intelligence and the semantic web and things like that, that are, frankly, really, really relevant, they're the companies that we should be considering working with, and who we should look to for new and innovative ideas, because they're actually in an industry that's relevant to us.
Google again. Love it or hate it, it's the inevitable benchmark. Thomas Davenport, the expert pinpointing